To understand creepypasta, you need to understand something fundamental about human nature. We love to be scared. Not the real kind of scared, where you are actually in danger, but the safe kind of scared. The kind where your heart races and your palms sweat, but you know deep down you are okay. For thousands of years, humans have been telling each other scary stories around campfires in ancient caves, in medieval taverns over mugs of ale, on front porches during hot summer nights, in dorm rooms with flashlights under blankets. These stories served a purpose. They warned us about dangers. They taught us lessons. They brought communities together. And most importantly, they gave us a thrill. Think about the stories you heard as a kid. The ones that made you pull the covers over your head. Maybe it was the story about the hook-handed man who attacked teenagers in parked cars. Or the babysitter who got creepy phone calls from inside the house. Or the vanishing hitchhiker who disappeared from the back seat. These are called urban legends, and they have been around forever. Urban legends are different from regular ghost stories. They always happen to a friend of a friend. They always have specific details that make them feel real. And they always tap into our deepest fears. Fear of strangers, fear of being alone, fear of the unknown, fear of technology, fear of our own bodies betraying us. In the 1950s and 60s, folklorists started studying these stories seriously. They collected them. They analyzed them. They traced how they spread from town to town, state to state, country to country. They discovered something fascinating. These stories evolved as they spread. Details changed. Settings shifted. But the core fear remained the same. One researcher named Jan Harold Brunvand became famous for documenting urban legends. He wrote books with titles like The Vanishing Hitchhiker and The Choking Doberman. He showed how these stories reflected the anxieties of their time. In the 1950s, when cars became common, stories about dangerous hitchhikers emerged. In the 1980s, when crime rates spiked, stories about killers hiding in the back seat spread like wildfire. But here is the thing. These stories spread slowly. Someone heard it at a party. They told their friend. That friend told their cousin. That cousin told their co-worker. It could take months or years for a story to travel across the country. And with each retelling, the story changed. Names were different. Locations shifted. Details got added or removed. There was no way to trace a story back to its source. No way to know who created it. No way to read the original version. These stories belonged to everyone and no one. They existed in the collective imagination, passed down through oral tradition like ancient myths. And then everything changed. The internet was born. It is the mid-1990s. You just got home from school. You drop your backpack, grab a snack, and sit down at the family computer in the living room. You wait for that beautiful, horrible sound. The screech and wail of the dial-up modem connecting to the internet. It takes forever. 30 seconds, a minute, sometimes longer. But finally, you are online. The internet in the 1990s was nothing like it is today. There was no Facebook, no YouTube, no Twitter or Instagram or TikTok, no smartphones, no streaming, no cloud storage. The web was a collection of simple text-based pages with terrible graphics and even worse design. But it was magic. And hidden in the corners of this new digital world were the first seeds of what would become Creepypasta. People started sharing scary stories on forums and message boards, places like Usenet groups, which were basically online discussion boards organized by topic. There were groups for everything: science fiction, horror movies, conspiracy theories, paranormal experiences. One of the most popular forums was called alt.horror. Here, people posted ghost stories, urban legends, and creepy personal experiences. But something interesting happened. Because these stories were written down instead of spoken, they could spread faster and farther than ever before. Someone in California could post a story at midnight. By morning, someone in New York could read it and share it with their friends. By afternoon, someone in Germany could translate it and post it on a European forum. The stories started to evolve. Writers realized they could do things online that were impossible in person. They could embed fake links, create fake websites, add images that looked like evidence, make their stories feel more real by using the internet itself as a prop. One early example was a story about something called the Diania House. In 2003, a writer named Eric Heiser created a fake blog about a guy investigating his missing friend. The blog looked real. It had dates, photos, video clips, email exchanges. But as you read deeper, things got weird. The house his friend disappeared into seemed to be alive. It was growing, changing, consuming people. The story blurred the line between fiction and reality in a way that had never been done before. Another famous early internet horror story was called Ted the Caver, written by a man posting under the username Ted. The story claimed to be a true account of exploring a mysterious cave. Ted and his friend discovered a narrow passage. They spent weeks digging it out, and as they went deeper, they started experiencing strange things, weird sounds, an overwhelming sense of dread, the feeling that something was waiting for them in the darkness. The story was posted in real time, starting in 2001. People followed along for months, waiting for updates. They argued about whether it was real. Some people believed it completely. Others suspected it was fiction, but loved it anyway. The story never got a proper ending. Ted just stopped posting, which made it even creepier. Was he okay? Did something happen in the cave? Or did he just lose interest? Nobody knows. These stories showed the power of the internet to create new forms of horror, but they were still individual projects, still isolated. The real explosion was about to begin, and it would start on the strangest, most chaotic corner of the internet, a place called 4chan. If you want to understand where creepypasta really came from, you need to understand 4chan. And let me warn you, 4chan is not a nice place. It is chaotic, offensive, unmoderated, a digital free-for-all where anything goes. It is the closest thing the internet has to true anarchy. 4chan was created in 2003 by a 15-year-old named Christopher Poole, who went by the username Moot. He based it on Japanese image boards, particularly one called 2chan. The idea was simple. Anyone could post anything anonymously. No usernames, no profiles, no accounts. Just pure, unfiltered content. Posts disappeared after a certain amount of time. Nothing was permanent. Nothing was saved unless someone manually archived it. 4chan is divided into different boards, each focused on a different topic. There is /A for anime and manga, /V for video games, /B for random, which is basically a free-for-all, and /X, the paranormal board. This is where creepypasta truly began. On /X, people posted ghost stories, conspiracy theories, and paranormal experiences. But they also started posting something new. Short, scary stories designed specifically to creep people out. Stories that could be read in a few minutes. Stories that ended with a twist or a disturbing image. Stories designed to be copied and pasted from thread to thread, spreading across the internet like a virus. And that is where the term creepypasta comes from. Copy and paste. Copypasta. Creepy copypasta. Creepypasta. The term emerged sometime around 2007 or 2008. Nobody knows exactly who coined it, but it stuck. The early creepypastas were rough. Most were poorly written, full of spelling errors and bad grammar, but some were genuinely terrifying. They tapped into primal fears in new ways. Fear of technology, fear of the internet itself, fear of cursed images and haunted video games, fear of things watching you through your webcam or hiding in your computer files. One of the earliest and most famous creepypastas was posted on 4chan in 2008. It was called The Russian Sleep Experiment. The story claimed that in the late 1940s, Soviet researchers kept 5 political prisoners awake for 15 days using an experimental gas. The prisoners were sealed in a chamber, promised their freedom if they stayed awake for 30 days. Everything was fine at first. But then things got dark, really dark. The prisoners started screaming, then they stopped. When researchers finally opened the chamber, they found something horrific. The prisoners had become monsters. They had torn themselves apart, eaten their own flesh, removed their internal organs, and they were still alive. Still conscious, still refusing to sleep. When asked what they wanted, they gave a chilling answer. We no longer want to be freed. We want to be left alone. The story was disturbing, graphic, and completely fake. But it spread everywhere. People shared it on Facebook, posted it on Reddit, emailed it to friends. Many people believed it was real. They searched for evidence, dug through historical records. Some people still believe it today, despite zero evidence that any such experiment ever occurred. The Russian sleep experiment showed what creepypasta could do. It could create modern myths, digital urban legends, stories that felt real because they used the language of official documents and scientific reports. Stories that spread through the internet like wildfire, impossible to trace back to a single source. But 4chan was chaotic. Stories appeared and disappeared. There was no way to organize them or preserve them. That is when dedicated creepypasta websites started to emerge, and the stories became even better, even scarier, even more unforgettable. Between 2009 and 2012, something incredible happened. Creepypasta exploded. It went from a niche internet phenomenon to a legitimate subculture with millions of fans worldwide. And it all started with a few dedicated websites. The most important was creepypasta.com, launched in 2008, but really taking off in 2009. The site was simple. A collection of horror stories organized by category. Some were just a few paragraphs. Others were long, sprawling narratives. Anyone could submit a story. The best ones got featured on the homepage. The worst ones were rejected or buried in the archives. Another major site was the Creepypasta Wiki, which launched in 2010. This was more organized. Stories were catalogued, tagged, rated by readers. The community could vote on which stories were the best, add comments, discuss theories. The wiki became a living archive of internet horror, a place where the community came together to share their favorite nightmares. During this golden age, some of the most iconic creepypastas were created. These were not just stories. They became cultural phenomena, characters that transcended their original texts and became part of internet folklore. Let us talk about the big ones. The legendary creepypastas that defined the genre. In June of 2009, a comedy website called Something Awful held a contest. The challenge was to create paranormal images by editing normal photos. One user, posting under the name Victor Surge, submitted to black and white photos. One showed a group of children in a playground. The other showed children walking near some buildings. But in both photos, barely visible in the background, was a tall, thin figure in a black suit. He had no face, just smooth, blank skin where his features should have been, and his arms were too long, unnaturally long, with fingers that stretched like tentacles. Victor Surge added captions to the photos claiming they were recovered from a fire at a library, claiming that 14 children had gone missing, claiming that the figure in the background was connected to their disappearances. He called him the Slender Man. The response was immediate. Other users started creating their own Slender Man content. More edited photos, short stories, videos. Within weeks, An entire mythology had emerged. The Slender Man lived in forests. He watched children from a distance. He could teleport. He made electronic devices malfunction. If you saw him, you were already doomed. He would stalk you, drive you insane, eventually take you. Nobody knew where he took his victims. They simply vanished. What made the Slender Man so effective was how he looked. He was familiar enough to be relatable. A man in a suit, but wrong in every way that mattered. Too tall, too thin, no face, those impossible arms. He tapped into a primal fear of being watched by something that looks almost human but is not. Something that belongs in the woods where you are hiking, in the trees outside your window, in the corner of your vision. The Slender Man spread beyond something awful. People created YouTube series about him. The most famous was called Marble Hornets, which started in June 2009, just weeks after the original post. It was presented as found footage. A student filmmaker trying to complete a project, but discovering that his friend had been stalked by the Slender Man. The series ran for 5 years and gained millions of followers. The Slender Man became the first true viral horror character created by the internet. He appeared in video games, comic books, art, fanfiction, conventions, merchandise. A Hollywood movie was made about him in 2018. Though most fans agreed it was terrible, but nothing could stop the legend. The Slender Man had become real in the way that all great myths are real. Not literally, but in our collective imagination. Sadly, the Slender Man legend also had a dark side. In 2014, two 12-year-old girls in Wisconsin stabbed their friend 19 times. They claimed they did it to become proxies of the Slender Man, to prove he was real. Their friend survived, thank goodness. But the incident sparked a nationwide debate about internet horror, mental health, and the influence of online content on young people. The girls were tried and convicted. They are still in prison today. The tragedy was a reminder that these stories, while fictional, can have real-world consequences. But it did not stop the Slender Man from remaining one of the most iconic creepypasta characters ever created. Before the story, there was an image. A photo that spread across the internet like a disease. A pale white face. Black eyes ringed with darkness. A wide, carved smile stretching from ear to ear. Burned, damaged skin. And a look of pure, unhinged madness. The image appeared on 4chan in 2005, but nobody knows who created it or where it originally came from. Some people claimed it was from a Japanese horror website. Others said it was a photo of a woman who had been severely burned. Still, others insisted it was just a Photoshop creation by a bored internet user. The truth has never been confirmed, but in 2008, someone wrote a story to go with the image. The story of Jeff the killer. According to the tale, Jeff was a normal teenage boy who moved to a new neighborhood with his family. He got into a fight with some bullies. During the fight, he was doused with bleach and set on fire. He survived, but was horribly disfigured. His skin turned white, his hair burned away, his eyelids were destroyed. While recovering in the hospital, Jeff looked at himself in the mirror, and something snapped. He did not see a victim. He saw beauty, perfection. He carved a permanent smile into his cheeks, so he would always be smiling. He burned off his eyelids, so he would never have to close his eyes, so he could always see his beautiful face. That night, Jeff murdered his entire family. He stabbed them while they slept, whispering his catchphrase, "Go to sleep." Then he disappeared into the night, becoming a serial killer who targeted sleeping victims. His calling card was that whispered phrase, "Go to sleep," the last thing his victims ever heard. The story was not particularly well written. It was simple, direct, almost juvenile. But combined with that image, it was terrifying. That face haunted people. It showed up in nightmares. People photoshopped it into their friends' photos as a prank. It became one of the most recognizable images in creepypasta history. Jeff the Killer became a phenomenon. Fanfiction writers wrote hundreds of stories about him. Artists drew him over and over. Cosplayers dressed as him at conventions. YouTube videos analyzing his story got millions of views. Some fans even claimed to have encountered him in real life, posting supposed evidence of his existence. Like Slender Man, Jeff the Killer had a dark, real-world impact. Several violent incidents were linked to his story. People carved smiles into their own faces trying to imitate him. Others claimed he told them to hurt people. In 2014, a young girl in Florida attacked her mother with a knife while wearing a mask resembling Jeff. She survived, but it was another reminder of how these stories can blur the line between fiction and reality for vulnerable individuals. Despite the controversy, Jeff the Killer remains one of the core pillars of creepypasta culture. A dark angel of internet horror, forever smiling in the shadows. Imagine you buy a used video game from a yard sale. It is a classic, The Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask for the Nintendo 64. You take it home, pop it into your console, and start playing. But something is wrong, very wrong. The game is glitchy. Characters behave strangely. Creepy music plays at the wrong times. And there is a save file you did not create. It is labeled Ben. You delete the file and start a new game. But Ben keeps coming back. He appears in places he should not be. He stares at you through the screen. The game starts addressing you by name. How does it know your name? You never told it. Strange videos start appearing on your computer. Videos you did not download. They show gameplay footage from your game. But you were not recording. Someone else was watching you play. Or something was watching you. This has been Drowned, one of the most famous gaming creepypastas ever created. It was posted on 4chan in September 2010 by a user named Jadozable. The story was presented as a true account of a haunted video game cartridge. Jadozable claimed he bought the game from an old man at a yard sale. The man's grandson, named Ben, had drowned, and somehow Ben's spirit had become trapped inside the game. What made Ben Drown special was the multimedia approach. Deducible did not just write a story. He recorded actual gameplay videos showing the glitches and strange occurrences. He edited them to look authentic. He created fake websites and clues for readers to discover. He built an entire alternate reality game around the story, making readers feel like they were part of the investigation. The videos were genuinely unsettling. Link, the main character, would turn and stare directly at the camera. The happy masked salesman, usually a friendly character, would appear suddenly with a terrifying expression. The statue form of Link would chase the player, even though that never happens in the actual game, and throughout it all, distorted music played, reversed audio, screaming. The phrase, "You have met with a terrible fate, have you not?" appeared over and over. Ben Drowned became a phenomenon. People tried to recreate the glitches in their own games. Theories emerged about what Ben really was: a ghost, a demon, a computer virus that could spread through the internet. Deducible continued the story with new chapters, revealing that Ben was not just haunting a game. He was trying to escape into the real world. The story tapped into a fear that many gamers had felt at some point. That moment when a game does something unexpected, when it glitches in a way that seems almost purposeful, when you feel like you are being watched through the screen. Ben Drowned took that vague unease and turned it into full-blown horror. Years later, Deducible revealed his real name was Alex Hall. He explained some of the tricks he used to create the videos. But even knowing the truth did not diminish the story's impact. Ben Drowned had already achieved legendary status. It spawned countless imitators and inspired a whole subgenre of haunted video game creepypasta. Picture this. You wake up in the middle of the night. Something woke you. A sound maybe. A feeling. You open your eyes and see a figure at the foot of your bed. It is crouched on all fours like an animal. Pale white skin stretched over bone. Long skeletal fingers with sharp claws. A hairless head with sunken, lifeless eyes and a mouth full of needle teeth. It is not moving, just watching you, breathing, waiting. You try to scream, you cannot. You try to move, you cannot. Sleep paralysis has you frozen, and the creature knows it. It crawls closer, slowly, deliberately. Its joints crack and pop with each movement. It climbs onto the bed, gets closer to your face. You can smell it now. Rot and decay and something else. Something wrong. It leans in close. So close you can feel its cold breath. And then it whispers one word: Rake. This is the Rake, one of the most terrifying creepypasta creatures ever created. Unlike Slender Man or Jeff the Killer, the Rake has no clear origin story. It just exists, an ancient monster that has been appearing in bedrooms for centuries. Some stories say it came from the woods. Others say it lives in the space between waking and sleeping. Still others claim it is not a creature at all, but a manifestation of our deepest fears. The earliest known appearance of the Rake was on 4chan in 2006. The original post described a humanoid creature that stalked and terrorized people in their homes, particularly in their bedrooms while they slept. The creature could move incredibly fast, could climb walls and ceilings, and most disturbingly, seemed to know when people were aware of it. What made the Rake so effective was how it tapped into primal fears. Fear of the dark, fear of being watched while you sleep, fear of paralysis, fear of monsters under the bed or in the closet. Things we worry about as children but never fully outgrow. The Rake brought those fears back with a vengeance. Unlike other creepypasta characters, the Rake never became mainstream. There was no big YouTube series, no movie, no video game. It remained underground, a creature whispered about on forums and in comments sections, and somehow that made it more terrifying. It felt secret, hidden, like knowing about it put you at risk of encountering it. People started sharing supposed true stories about the Rake, claims of seeing it in their bedroom, finding scratches on their windows, hearing it moving in their attic. Some people photoshopped images of the creature into photos of their homes. Others created elaborate hoaxes, complete with fake police reports and witness testimonies. The Rake became a legend, a modern boogeyman. Parents started hearing their children talk about it, about the pale thing that visited them at night. Some kids were genuinely traumatized. Psychologists started seeing patients who claimed to have encountered the creature. They had to explain that it was not real, that it was just a story from the internet. But try telling that to someone who swears they saw it crouched at the foot of their bed. The Rake remains one of the most purely terrifying creepypasta creations. No tragic backstory, no complex mythology, just a nightmare creature that exists to scare us in the place we should feel most safe, our own beds. By 2011, creepypasta was no longer just a niche internet thing. It had become a full-blown cultural phenomenon. Millions of people were reading these stories, sharing them, creating their own, and most importantly, coming together to form a community. The community was everywhere. On Reddit, the No Sleep subreddit became the premier place for original horror fiction. The rules were simple. All stories had to be told as if they were true. No breaking the fourth wall. No admitting it was fiction. Readers had to play along in the comments, treating every story as a real account of something that happened. This created an immersive experience that made the stories feel more real and more terrifying. No Sleep launched in 2010 and quickly became one of Reddit's most popular communities. Stories that did well there could get hundreds of thousands of readers. Some of the best No Sleep stories were later published as books. Others were adapted into podcasts, short films, or YouTube videos. The subreddit became a launching pad for horror writers, a place where anyone could share their nightmares and potentially build a career. YouTube also became crucial to the spread of creepypasta. channels emerged dedicated to reading creepypastas aloud. Some readers used creepy voices. Others added atmospheric music and sound effects. Some created elaborate animations or used gameplay footage as background. These narration channels became incredibly popular. Channels like Mr. Creepypasta, Creeps MC Pasta, and Lazy Masquerade gained hundreds of thousands of subscribers. People loved listening to creepypastas before bed, or while driving at night, or while home alone. The combination of a good narrator and a scary story created the perfect recipe for fear. And unlike reading text on a screen, audio stories felt more immediate, more personal, like someone was telling you a secret in the dark. Artists joined the community too. They created illustrations of famous creepypasta characters, drew comics, made animations. Some of this art was beautiful, some was disturbing. All of it added to the mythology. Fan art helped characters like Slender Man and Jeff the Killer become more real, more defined. Different artists had different interpretations, but certain elements became standardized through community consensus. Gaming also became part of the culture. Indie developers created horror games based on creepypastas. The most successful was Slender. The 8 pages, released in 2012. The game was simple. You walked through a dark forest with only a flashlight, trying to collect 8 notes while being stalked by the Slender Man. If he got too close or you looked at him too long, you died. The game became a phenomenon. YouTube gaming channels played it, screamed at it, made it go viral. More creepypasta games followed, some based on existing stories, others creating new horror experiences. Games like SCP Containment Breach, based on the SCP Foundation collaborative writing project. Games like I'm Scared, which broke the fourth wall by creating files on your computer. Games that used your webcam or microphone to scare you. The line between creepypasta and horror gaming became blurred. Conventions started hosting creepypasta panels. Fans could meet their favorite narrators, attend horror story workshops, buy creepypasta merchandise. Some people even came dressed as their favorite characters. Jeff the Killer was particularly popular, Slender Man too. It was strange seeing these monsters brought to life through cosplay, but also somehow perfect. These characters had started as digital ghosts. Now they were walking among us. The community developed its own language and inside jokes. Terms like pasta for story, poorly written stories became known as cringes. Stories that tried too hard to be edgy were called edge pastas. The community could be harsh. They mocked bad writing mercilessly, but they also celebrated good stories with enthusiasm. A well-written creepypasta could make you internet famous overnight. By 2012, creepypasta had gone from an obscure internet subculture to a massive, thriving community. But with popularity came challenges, and the golden age was about to face its first major tests. Success always comes with problems, and by 2013, the creepypasta community was facing several major issues. The biggest was quality, or rather, the lack of it. When creepypasta was small and underground, most stories were written by people who genuinely cared about crafting good horror. They understood pacing, atmosphere, how to build dread. But as the genre exploded in popularity, thousands of new writers flooded in. Many were young, inexperienced. They had read a few famous creepypastas and thought, I can do that. The result was a tsunami of terrible stories. Stories with no plot. Stories that were just lists of things that were supposedly scary but had no narrative structure. Stories with horrible grammar and spelling. Stories that relied on cheap shock value instead of genuine horror. Stories that ended with the main character dying and then revealing they had been a ghost the whole time. The community called these clichés pasta tropes, and they became epidemic. The most hated trope was hyper-realistic blood. This phrase showed up in so many bad gaming creepypastas that it became a meme. Someone would play a haunted video game and describe the blood as hyper-realistic, as if that made it scarier. The community mocked it relentlessly. If you used the phrase hyper-realistic blood in your story, readers knew immediately that you were an amateur. Another hated trope was the cursed image or cursed video. These stories always followed the same pattern. Someone finds a disturbing image or video online. They share it. Everyone who sees it dies or goes insane. The end. No character development. No plot. Just look at thing, die. It got old fast. The creepypasta wikis tried to fight back. They implemented quality standards. Stories had to meet certain criteria to be accepted. No pasta tropes, no terrible grammar, no pointless shock value. Moderators would reject stories that did not meet standards. Some writers got angry. They accused the moderators of being elitist, of killing creativity, but most of the community supported the changes. They wanted to read good stories, not wade through garbage. Another problem was theft. As creepypasta became more popular, some people started stealing stories and passing them off as their own. They would copy a story from 4chan or an obscure forum, change a few details, and post it on a more popular site claiming they wrote it. This caused drama, arguments, accusations. The anonymous nature of early creepypasta made it hard to prove who wrote what first. Copyright became an issue too. Many early creepypastas had been posted anonymously. Nobody knew who owned the rights. Could you make money off a story that appeared on 4chan with no author attached? Could you adapt it into a movie? Publish it in a book? These questions had no clear answers. Some creators tried to claim ownership of characters they clearly did not create. Others tried to trademark names and images from collaborative projects. The worst case was the Slender Man situation. After the character became popular, Victor Surge, the original creator, tried to protect his creation. But because Slender Man had been built collaboratively by hundreds of people, it was messy. Who owned what? Victor created the original concept and image, but other people added to the mythology, created the proxies, wrote the rules about how he hunted, developed his backstory. In the end, most of the community agreed that collaborative creations should remain in the public domain. That was the spirit of Creepypasta. Stories that belonged to everyone, that could be adapted and reimagined freely. But some creators wanted to profit from their work, and that tension between community ownership and individual rights never fully went away. Despite these growing pains, the community survived. The best writers continued producing quality work. The wikis maintained their standards, and readers learned to sort through the flood of content to find the gems worth reading. Creepypasta had grown up, and it was ready for its next evolution. Something interesting started happening around 2013. Writers got ambitious. They stopped writing short, punchy stories designed to be shared in a single post. Instead, they started creating epic, sprawling narratives, stories that unfolded over weeks or months, stories with complex plots, recurring characters, and intricate mythologies. The No Sleep subreddit became the epicenter of this movement. The rules there encouraged serialized storytelling. You could post one chapter, get feedback, and then continue the story based on how readers reacted. This created a unique relationship between writers and readers. Stories evolved in real time. Writers could test ideas. Readers could theorize and speculate between chapters. One of the first major long-form success stories was the Search and Rescue Woods series by Kerry Hammond, posted under the username Search and Rescue Officer. The stories claimed to be true accounts from a park ranger working in a national forest. The ranger encountered strange things in the woods, staircases that appeared in the middle of nowhere, leading to nothing, missing persons cases with impossible details, people who reappeared after years with no memory of where they had been. The stories were told in a matter-of-fact, professional tone, like official reports. This made them feel authentic. People debated whether they were real. Park rangers from around the country chimed in with their own strange experiences. Some confirmed that weird things did happen in national forests. Others called the stories fiction. But everyone kept reading. Another breakthrough came with Pen Pal by Dathan Auerbach, posted in 2011 but gaining massive popularity in the following years. Pen Pal was a series of connected stories about childhood memories. On the surface, they seemed innocent. A school project about pen pals, playing in the woods, taking photos. But as the stories continued, darker patterns emerged. Someone had been watching the narrator his entire childhood, following him, leaving clues. And the narrator was just now, as an adult, putting the pieces together. The brilliance of Pen Pal was how it revealed horror through hindsight. As readers, we saw the danger before the narrator did. We wanted to reach through the screen and warn the child he had been. The story built dread slowly, methodically. until the final revelation hit like a hammer. It was published as a book in 2012 and became a bestseller. Then came The Left-Right Game by Jack Anderson in 2017. This was a serial about a journalist investigating a paranormal road trip game. The rules were simple. Drive down an empty road at night. At every intersection, alternate between turning left and right. Eventually, you will leave normal reality and enter somewhere else, somewhere wrong. The journalist joins a group attempting the game. And of course, things go terribly, horribly wrong. The Left-Right Game was masterfully written. Each chapter ended with a cliffhanger. The world behind the turns was bizarre and terrifying. Impossible geography. Towns that should not exist. People who had been missing for decades, still living in the wrong places. The story kept readers hooked for months. It was later adapted into a podcast starring Tessa Thompson, proving that creepypasta had reached mainstream entertainment. These long-form stories showed that creepypasta had evolved. It was no longer just short shock tales. It could be literature, real, sophisticated horror fiction that rivaled traditionally published work. Writers were developing voices, building audiences. Some were making money through book deals, Patreon support, and podcast adaptations. The community embraced this evolution. People loved following serialized stories, discussing theories between chapters, waiting eagerly for updates. It was like television, but in text form, and unlike TV, there was no schedule. Stories updated when the writer finished the next part. Sometimes that was daily, sometimes weekly. Sometimes the writer would disappear for months and come back with a new chapter out of nowhere. Long-form creepypasta proved that internet horror could be just as compelling, just as well crafted as anything published by traditional media. The medium had matured, and it was just getting started. We need to talk about something that exists adjacent to creepypasta, but has become its own phenomenon. The SCP Foundation. SCP stands for Secure, Contain, Protect, and if you have never heard of it, prepare to lose several days of your life falling down this rabbit hole. The SCP Foundation started on 4chan in 2007. Someone posted a story formatted like a classified government document. The document described an object called SCP-173. It was a statue that looked like a humanoid figure made of concrete and rebar. It had a disturbing face, and it could move, but only when nobody was looking at it. According to the document, if you blinked while alone with SCP-173, it would instantly appear in front of you and snap your neck. The only way to contain it was to keep it under constant observation. Multiple people watching it at all times, never blinking simultaneously. The document was written in clinical, bureaucratic language. Procedures for containment, incident reports, interview logs. It felt official, real. The response was immediate. People loved the format. They started creating their own SCP documents. The premise was simple. The SCP Foundation is a secret organization that captures, contains, and studies anomalous objects, creatures, and phenomena. Anything that breaks the laws of physics or reality. Anything that threatens normalcy. The Foundation keeps these things locked away from the public, protecting humanity from things we are not ready to know about. Each SCP is assigned a number. SCP-002, SCP-682, SCP-3008. There are now over 7,000 documented SCPs, each with its own article, its own containment procedures, its own horror. Some are objects. A coffee machine that dispenses any liquid you request. But the requests get darker and more disturbing over time. A mask that, when worn, makes you believe you are the absolute best at everything, leading to disasters. An old man who can move through any photograph he is in. Some SCPs are creatures. A reptile that must be kept in a sealed chamber and never photographed, because anyone who sees its image becomes obsessed with destroying it. A plague doctor from medieval times who tries to cure people but only makes things worse. An unkillable reptile that hates all life and cannot be destroyed no matter what the Foundation tries. Some SCPs are places. An infinite staircase that descends forever. A pocket dimension that can only be accessed through certain doors. A parallel universe where everything is slightly wrong, and some SCPs are events. A future apocalypse. A color that should not exist. A number that kills anyone who learns its true value. What makes the SCP Foundation brilliant is the format. Every article follows the same structure. Object classification, containment procedures, description, addendum with additional information or incident reports. The clinical, scientific tone makes everything scarier. These are not ghost stories told around a campfire. These are official documents describing real threats, or at least they are written to feel that way. The SCP Foundation has its own mythology. Different departments, different sites around the world where SCPs are stored. Mobile task forces that capture new anomalies. Ethics committees that debate what should and should not be done in the name of protecting humanity. There are Foundation researchers, security personnel, Class D personnel who are death row inmates used for dangerous testing. The whole project is collaborative. Anyone can write an SCP article and submit it to the wiki. The community votes. If your article gets enough upvotes, it stays. If it gets too many downvotes, it is deleted. This quality control keeps the standard high. Bad articles do not survive. Good articles become canon, added to the official list. The SCP Foundation spawned its own subculture. Artists draw the creatures and objects. Game developers create SCP games. YouTube channels explain the lore. There are SCP animations, comics, role-playing games, and merchandise. Several video games based on the Foundation have been released, with SCP Containment Breach being the most famous. The SCP Foundation is not technically creepypasta. It is its own thing, but it shares DNA with creepypasta. Both came from the same online horror communities. Both use the internet as a tool for collaborative storytelling. Both blur the line between fiction and reality. And both have created modern folklore that exists in the collective imagination of millions of people. If you have never explored the SCP Foundation, go carefully. It is easy to get lost in there. You will start reading one article, then another, then another. Before you know it, it is 3 a.m. and you have read 50 articles, and you are questioning whether any of it could actually be real. That is the power of good horror. It makes you doubt what you know. Something major happened around 2016. People stopped reading creepypasta, or rather, they stopped reading it the traditional way. Instead, they started listening. YouTube had existed for years, of course, but around this time, horror narration channels exploded in popularity. Channels that did nothing but read creepypasta stories aloud, often with music, sound effects, and atmospheric backgrounds. The most successful channels were pulling in millions of views per month. Mr. Nightmare became one of the biggest, specializing in true scary stories and creepypastas narrated in a deep, unsettling voice. His videos about scary things that happened to people in real life got tens of millions of views. People loved falling asleep to his videos, or listening while driving at night, or playing them in the background while gaming. Corpse Husband emerged as another major voice. Literally, his voice was impossibly deep, the result of a medical condition called GERD. He started narrating horror stories and quickly built a massive following. His voice became iconic. People would request specific stories just to hear him read them. He later transitioned into music and gaming, but his horror narration videos are still among the most popular in the genre. Lazy Masquerade focused on true crime and paranormal stories, often mixing creepypasta with supposedly real accounts. His presentation was more documentary style, with images and video clips accompanying the narration. This hybrid approach attracted people who wanted something that felt more grounded in reality, even when the stories were pure fiction. Other channels developed their own niches. Some specialized in video game creepypastas. Others focused on lost episode stories about cartoons. Some did multi-voice dramatic readings with different actors playing different characters. Some added elaborate animations. The variety was incredible, and the audience kept growing. Why did YouTube narrations become so popular? Several reasons. First, they were convenient. You could listen while doing other things, commuting, working, cleaning, exercising, reading, required your full attention. Audio did not. Second, good narrators added a lot to the experience. The right voice, the right pacing, the right atmosphere could make even a mediocre story terrifying. Third, the YouTube algorithm loved this content. Horror videos kept people watching. They had high engagement. People binged them for hours. This shift changed creepypasta in important ways. Stories that worked well in audio became more popular than stories that only worked in text. Writers started crafting stories specifically for narration. They avoided complex formatting or visual tricks that would not translate to audio. They wrote dialogue that sounded natural when spoken aloud. They created cliffhangers that worked when you were listening in the dark. YouTube also introduced a new problem: copyright. When stories were just text on forums, nobody worried much about ownership. But now narrators were making money from ads on videos featuring other people's stories. Some writers were fine with this, considering it free promotion. Others were angry. They wanted compensation or at least credit. Disputes erupted. Some narrators got copyright strikes. Some channels got taken down. The community eventually developed loose standards. Narrators were expected to credit authors, link to the original story, get permission if possible. Many narrators developed relationships with writers. Some even paid for exclusive rights to narrate certain stories first. A professional ecosystem emerged where it had not existed before. Podcasts joined the party too. The No Sleep podcast launched in 2011, but really took off in this period. It featured full cast productions of stories from the No Sleep subreddit, professional actors, sound design, music, production quality rivaling major audio dramas. The podcast proved that creepypasta could be transformed into premium content people would pay for. They offered free episodes with ads and premium subscriptions for ad-free content and bonus episodes. Other horror podcasts followed. Lore, which explored the real history behind legends and folklore. Welcome to Night Vale, a surreal comedy horror show about a desert town where every conspiracy theory is true. The Magnus Archives, a British horror anthology with an overarching mystery. These shows proved that audio horror had a massive, dedicated audience willing to support creators financially. By 2018, audio had become the dominant way people consumed creepypasta. The medium had shifted, and it would never shift back. Let us talk about one of creepypasta's most enduring subgenres, lost episodes. These are stories about cursed or forbidden episodes of popular cartoons and TV shows. Episodes that were supposedly created but never aired, or aired once and then banned. Episodes that traumatized everyone who saw them. Episodes that maybe killed people. The appeal is obvious. We all grew up watching cartoons. They represented safety, innocence, joy. Seeing those beloved characters corrupted and twisted hits differently than generic horror. It is like finding out Santa Claus is real but he is evil. It ruins something pure from your childhood. And that is exactly what makes these stories so effective. The most famous lost episode creepypasta is Squidward's suicide, also known as Red Mist, posted on 7chan in 2009. The story claimed to be written by an intern at Nickelodeon Animation Studios. According to the story, the intern was reviewing footage for an upcoming episode of SpongeBob SquarePants. Everything seemed normal at first. Squidward tried to play his clarinet. SpongeBob and Patrick interrupted. Standard stuff. But then Squidward performed at a concert and the audience booed him. Squidward went home and started crying. His eyes became red and bloodshot, drawn in a hyper-realistic style, completely different from the cartoon's usual look. The scene went on for an uncomfortable amount of time, just Squidward crying. The audio became distorted. Strange images flashed on screen, disturbing photos of dead children. And then Squidward pulled out a shotgun and shot himself in the head. The story claimed Nickelodeon immediately pulled the episode, destroyed all copies, but a few people had seen it, and 2 children who watched it committed suicide shortly after. The intern writing the story claimed to be haunted by what he saw, unable to forget those images, those sounds. Of course, none of it was true. Nickelodeon never made such an episode. The images described in the story were fabricated, but the story spread like wildfire. Fan artists created their interpretations of the hyper-realistic Squidward. That image, the one with the red, bloodshot eyes, became iconic. Even people who never read the story recognized it. It became shorthand for Creepypasta itself. Other lost episode stories followed the same formula. Candle Cove was about a children's show from the 1970s that nobody else remembered. It featured puppets that looked disturbing and acted violent. The show supposedly traumatized everyone who watched it, and when people tried to find evidence it existed, they discovered something horrifying. The show never existed. What they remembered as Candle Cove was actually footage of dead air, static. Their child brains had filled in the puppets and story to explain what they were seeing. Or maybe something was broadcasting through the static, something that wanted to be seen. Dead Bart was about a lost episode of The Simpsons where Bart died in a plane crash. The episode showed his body, showed the family grieving, showed them eventually moving on with their lives. But scattered throughout were images predicting the deaths of real guest stars who had appeared on the show. The episode supposedly predicted their deaths years before they happened. Proof that whoever created this episode could see the future, or cause the future. Suicide Mouse was about a lost Mickey Mouse cartoon from 1930. The cartoon showed Mickey walking down a street for several minutes while disturbing music played. The animation looped. Mickey just kept walking. The music got more distorted, and then screaming started. Real human screaming. The cartoon supposedly drove everyone who watched the full version insane. Many committed suicide. Others had to be institutionalized. These stories were rarely well written. They followed the same basic template. Someone discovers a lost episode. It starts normal but gets disturbing. Characters die or go insane. Disturbing imagery appears. The episode ends with death, and everyone who watches it suffers consequences. Despite the repetitive formula, people loved them. They combined nostalgia with corruption, childhood with death. safety with danger. The lost episode subgenre became so popular that it became a cliché. The phrase hyper-realistic eyes appeared in so many stories that it became a joke. The community started mocking bad lost episode pastas. YouTube channels made parody videos. But even the mockery was affectionate. These stories had become part of creepypasta culture, part of its history. Interestingly, some real lost episodes do exist. Episodes of cartoons that were banned for various reasons. An episode of Tiny Toon Adventures about drunk driving was pulled after airing once. An episode of Dexter's Laboratory was banned because it featured a character named Rude Removal who swore constantly. These real lost episodes gave the creepypasta stories a thin veneer of plausibility. If some episodes really were banned, maybe others existed that were even worse. Lost episode creepypastas showed how effective it is to take something innocent and make it sinister. How powerful nostalgia can be as a tool for horror. How much we want to believe in hidden secrets from our childhood, even when we know they are not real. We talked about Ben Drowned in part 1, but the world of gaming creepypastas extends far beyond that one story. Video games became one of the richest sources of horror on the internet, and it makes sense. Games are interactive, personal. They happen in your own home, on your own screen. If something goes wrong in a game, it feels like it is happening to you specifically. One of the most elaborate gaming creepypastas was Petscop. This one started in 2017 on YouTube. A user named Paul uploaded a video of himself playing an unreleased PlayStation 1 game called Petscop. The game seemed like a simple pet collecting game at first. Colorful graphics, cute creatures, kid-friendly design. But Paul discovered that the game had a hidden, much darker second half. As Paul explored, he found disturbing content. References to child abuse, cryptic messages, a character named Care who seemed to represent a missing child. The game knew things about Paul's life it should not know. It referenced his past, his family, things nobody else could possibly know. The deeper he went, the stranger it got. The game seemed alive, watching him, testing him. Petscop was not a real game. It was an elaborate art project created by Tony Domenico. He made the entire thing, designed the game graphics, wrote the story, created over 20 hours of footage. The series became a phenomenon. People analyzed every frame, created elaborate theories, built wikis documenting every detail. Petscop proved that gaming creepypasta could be sophisticated, artistic, and deeply unsettling without relying on cheap scares. Sonic.exe was much simpler but equally effective. The story claimed that someone received a CD labeled Sonic.exe from a friend. When they played it, they found a modified version of the original Sonic the Hedgehog game. But something was wrong. The title screen showed Sonic with realistic eyes that followed the cursor. The levels were dark, empty, and as they played, characters died in graphic ways. Sonic hunted them, killed them, and at the end, Sonic looked directly at the player and said, "I am God." The story was not particularly scary on its own, but the image it created was. Fan artists drew this demon version of Sonic with realistic eyes and a twisted smile. That image spread everywhere. Games were created based on it, songs written about it. Sonic.exe became his own character, separate from the original story. A twisted, evil version of a beloved childhood icon. Pokémon had dozens of creepypastas. The most famous was Lavender Town Syndrome. According to the story, the original Japanese version of Pokémon Red and Green had a problem. The music in Lavender Town, a spooky cemetery level, used high-frequency tones that caused children to become suicidal. Hundreds of kids supposedly killed themselves. Nintendo quietly changed the music in later versions, hoping to cover up the tragedy. None of this was true. No children died. The music was never changed for that reason. But the story persisted because Lavender Town really was creepy. The music really was unsettling, and kids really did get scared playing through that section. The creepypasta took something people remembered feeling and gave it a horrifying explanation. Other Pokemon creepypastas included stories about glitched Pokemon that caused problems. Missing number, an actual glitch Pokemon in the original games, was said to corrupt save files and erase memories. Lost Silver told the story of a Pokemon Gold cartridge where all the Pokemon were dead. The player character was a ghost, and the game ended with the character at the top of a mountain where someone had committed suicide. Minecraft became a source of horror too. Herobrine was the most famous Minecraft creepypasta. According to various stories, Herobrine was a ghost haunting Minecraft. He looked like the default player character Steve, but with white eyes. He would appear in your world, build strange structures, watch you from a distance. Sometimes he would attack, sometimes he would just watch. Players claimed to have spotted him in their games. Screenshots circulated, videos were uploaded. Minecraft's creators repeatedly insisted Herobrine was not real and was never in the game, but that only made the legend stronger. The beauty of gaming creepypastas is that they can never be fully disproven. Games are complex, they have bugs, they do unexpected things. That weird thing that happened to you while playing, was it just a glitch, or was it something more? That figure you saw in the distance, was it meant to be there? That sound file that played at the wrong time, was it a mistake? Gaming creepypastas exploit our uncertainty. They take the strange moments we all experience and give them sinister explanations. And in the age of online gaming, where games are constantly updating and changing, where developers can patch things without telling us, how do we know what is real and what is not? Gaming creepypastas thrive in that uncertainty. They live in the gap between what we think we know and what we can prove. Around 2015, something new emerged that blurred the line between creepypasta and reality more than ever before. alternate reality games, or ARGs. These were not just stories you read or videos you watched. They were interactive experiences that used multiple platforms: YouTube, Twitter, fake websites, hidden clues, puzzles to solve, phone numbers to call. ARGs made you part of the story. One of the earliest horror ARGs was Marble Hornets, which we mentioned briefly in part 1, starting in 2009. It told the story of a student filmmaker investigating his friend who had been stalked by the Slender Man. But Marble Hornets was more than just a video series. It had a companion Twitter account, hidden messages in the videos, codes to crack. The community worked together to solve mysteries and uncover the truth, or what passed for truth in a fictional story. The biggest ARG to come out of the Creepypasta community was This House Has People in It, created in 2016 by Adult Swim and filmmaker Alan Resnick. It started as a surreal 12-minute video, security camera footage of a family having dinner. But things go wrong, very wrong. The daughter starts sinking into the floor. The parents do not react normally. Strange things appear in the background. The whole thing is deeply unsettling. But that was just the beginning. The video linked to a fake security company website filled with hours of additional footage, surveillance from different angles, different times, documents, chat logs, medical records. As people explored, they discovered a vast, interconnected mystery. What was wrong with the family? Why was the daughter sinking? What did it all mean? The community spent months piecing together the puzzle, creating elaborate theories, timelines, character analyses. Local 58 was another successful ARG. It presented itself as a collection of videos from a local TV station in the 1980s. Emergency broadcast tests, weather reports, community announcements. But strange messages were hidden in the broadcasts. Warnings about something coming from space. Instructions for survival. As the series progressed, reality broke down. The moon was wrong. Time stopped making sense. Reality itself was ending. And the TV station was trying to warn us. What made ARGs special was the community involvement. Players did not just consume content, they actively participated. They solved puzzles together, shared discoveries, built wikis. Some ARGs even had real-world components, packages mailed to players, phone numbers that actually worked, locations you could visit. The line between game and reality became impossibly thin. The danger, of course, was that some people forgot it was a game. They became too invested, too convinced. In some ARGs, creators had to step in and remind players it was fiction, that they should not actually call the police or investigate real locations. The immersive nature of ARGs could make people lose perspective. But when done well, ARGs created experiences unlike anything else. They made horror collaborative, social. Instead of being scared alone, you were scared with a community. You could discuss theories, work through fear together, and the experience of solving puzzles and uncovering secrets made the horror feel earned. You were not just watching someone else's nightmare, you were living your own. ARGs showed the future of interactive storytelling. They proved that audiences wanted to participate, not just observe. And they demonstrated that the best horror comes from not knowing where the story ends and reality begins. For years, creepypasta existed in the shadows of the internet. It was underground, niche, something you had to seek out. But around 2017 and 2018, something changed. Hollywood noticed. Publishers noticed, mainstream media noticed, and suddenly, creepypasta was everywhere. The first major sign was the Slender Man movie, released in 2018. It should have been a massive success. Slender Man was one of the most recognizable horror characters created in the internet age. Millions of people knew the story. The mythology was rich. The potential was there. But the movie was terrible. Critics hated it. Fans hated it. It bombed at the box office. What went wrong? Several things. First, the movie was aimed at teenagers, but was rated PG-13. Which meant it could not be truly scary. Second, it came out just a few years after the Wisconsin stabbing incident, which made the timing feel exploitative. Third, and most importantly, the filmmakers did not understand what made Slender Man work. They turned him into a generic horror movie monster. Jump scares, loud noises, nothing subtle, nothing atmospheric. They stripped away everything that made the character special. The creepypasta community felt betrayed. This was their character, their creation, and Hollywood had ruined it. The failure of the Slender Man movie made studios cautious about adapting other creepypastas. But it did not stop them from trying. Channel Zero was more successful. This was a TV series on Sci-Fi that ran from 2016 to 2018. Each season adapted a different creepypasta. Season 1 was based on Candle Cove, Season 2 on the No End House, Season 3 on Butcher's Block, Season 4 on the Dream Door. The show was well made, atmospheric, it understood horror. Critics praised it, fans mostly liked it, but it never found a huge audience and was cancelled after 4 seasons. Books had more success. Many successful no-sleep authors got book deals. Stories that started as free posts on Reddit were published by major publishers. Some became bestsellers. Authors like Dathan Auerbach with Pen Pal, C.K. Walker with Correspondence, Rebecca Klingel with The Institute. These writers proved that creepypasta could be legitimate literature, that internet horror deserved to be taken seriously. Podcasts brought even more success. The No Sleep podcast continued growing. Other horror podcasts emerged and thrived: Limetown, Tanis, The Black Tapes, Archive 81. These shows attracted millions of listeners. Some were directly adapted from creepypastas. Others were original but inspired by creepypasta's aesthetic and approach. Video games based on creepypastas found success too. Indie developers created games based on SCP stories, on Slender Man, on various horror premises from the community. Some of these games were crude, some were surprisingly sophisticated. The best ones understood what made creepypasta work. Atmosphere over action, mystery over answers, dread over jump scares. Mainstream recognition came with downsides. As creepypasta became more popular, it became more commercialized. What started as collaborative, community-driven storytelling became about money, about rights, about who owned what. Some creators got rich, many did not. Arguments erupted about fair compensation, about credit, about the soul of the community. There was also the problem of watering down. When creepypasta was underground, it could be truly disturbing. It could go to dark places. But mainstream adaptations had to appeal to wider audiences. They had to be suitable for theaters, for television, for bookstores. That meant toning things down, making them safer, more palatable. Some argued this was necessary. Others said it betrayed what creepypasta was supposed to be. The debate continues today. Is mainstream success good for creepypasta, or does it kill what made it special? There is no clear answer, but one thing is certain. Creepypasta has proven it can exist, both underground and mainstream. It can be edgy, internet horror, and legitimate entertainment. The question is whether those two versions can coexist without destroying each other. Around 2019, a new platform began changing how people consumed horror. TikTok, this short-form video app, where everything was designed to be watched in under a minute, seemed like the worst possible place for horror stories. How could you build dread in 15 seconds? How could you develop atmosphere, create characters, tell a complete story? But Gen Z figured it out. They created a new form of horror, bite-sized, fast, designed for endless scrolling. Instead of long atmospheric stories, they made short, punchy videos that delivered scares quickly. Sometimes it was just a scary image with text overlay. Sometimes it was a quick story told while someone did their makeup. Sometimes it was a jump scare. But it worked. TikTok horror was different from traditional creepypasta. It was visual, audio-based, reliant on music and sound effects. The TikTok algorithm meant that scary videos could go viral overnight. A random user could post a creepy video and get millions of views. This democratized horror in a new way. You did not need to be a good writer. You just needed a phone and a decent idea. Some TikTok horror creators became massive, accounts with millions of followers. They posted daily horror content. Some told continuing stories. Others did standalone scares. Some made elaborate productions with special effects. Others kept it simple. A dark room, a whispered story, the shadow of something moving behind them. TikTok also revived old creepypasta characters. Slender Man appeared in TikTok videos. Jeff the Killer, the Rake. A new generation discovered these characters through TikTok, not through the original stories. For many Gen Z users, TikTok was their first exposure to creepypasta. They did not know the stories came from forums and wikis. They just knew the characters from short videos. New characters emerged too. The Smiling Man, a tall figure in old-fashioned clothing who dances eerily while approaching people on empty streets. The Hat Man, a shadow figure in a wide-brimmed hat seen during sleep paralysis. Siren Head, a massive creature created by horror artist Trevor Henderson. His design went viral on TikTok and other platforms. He was essentially a telephone pole with sirens for a head, terrifying and perfect for short-form horror. Twitter had its own horror culture too. Twitter horror threads became popular. Users would post long threads telling scary stories, one tweet at a time. The format was constraining. Each tweet could only be 280 characters, but creative writers made it work. They used the format's limitations to build tension. Each tweet was a small revelation, a new piece of information. Readers would read through the entire thread, heart racing, unable to stop until they reached the end. Reddit remained important too. The No Sleep subreddit continued thriving. New subreddits emerged for specific types of horror. Two-sentence horror stories for extremely short scares. Let's not meet for true scary encounters with real people. Glitch in the Matrix for stories about reality breaking down. Each community developed its own style and standards. Instagram became a platform for horror art. Artists posted creepy illustrations, disturbing photographs, surreal images. Some created ongoing series, character designs, monsters, haunted places. The visual nature of Instagram made it perfect for the artistic side of horror. And because Instagram's algorithm favored engagement, creepy images that made people stop scrolling performed well. What all these platforms showed was that horror was adapting to new formats. Each platform demanded a different approach. TikTok needed quick scares. Twitter needed serialized tension. Instagram needed striking visuals. Reddit still valued longer, more developed stories. YouTube worked best for narration and video content. Horror creators had to be versatile, able to work across multiple platforms, tell the same story in different ways. The social media generation consumed horror differently than previous generations. They wanted it fast, shareable, memeable, but they also engaged more deeply. They commented, shared theories, created fan content. Horror became participatory in new ways, and creepypasta evolved to meet these new expectations. We need to talk about the dark side of creepypasta, because it is not all fun, scares, and creative stories. Real people have been hurt, lives have been affected, and the community has had to grapple with questions about responsibility and ethics. We already mentioned the 2014 Wisconsin stabbing. Two 12-year-old girls stabbed their friend 19 times to please the Slender Man. Their friend survived, but the incident sparked a national conversation. Were creepypastas dangerous? Should they be regulated? Were the creators responsible for how people interpreted their work? The girls involved clearly had serious mental health issues. They were not typical readers of creepypasta. They had trouble distinguishing fiction from reality. They became obsessed with the Slender Man, believing he was real and would reward them for violence. The case was tragic. The girls were tried as adults and sentenced to long terms in mental health facilities. Their victim, Peyton Lutner, showed incredible courage. She recovered and has spoken about forgiveness. The incident raised questions the community struggled to answer. Should creepypasta sites have age restrictions? Should stories come with warnings about mental health? Should creators be held liable if someone does something violent after reading their work? Most people agreed the answer was no. These were fictional stories. Millions of people read them without hurting anyone. Blaming creepypasta was like blaming horror movies or heavy metal music. It was looking for easy explanations for complex problems. But the community did become more conscious of its impact. Many sites added disclaimers. All content is fiction. If you are struggling with mental health issues, please seek help. Some narrators started including resources in their video descriptions, crisis hotlines, mental health websites. There was an acknowledgement that while the stories were fictional, their impact could be real. Other controversies emerged over the years. There were cases of people hurting themselves while trying to imitate creepypasta characters. Teenagers carving smiles into their faces like Jeff the Killer. People going into abandoned buildings to look for the Slender Man and getting injured. Cases where individuals claimed creepypasta characters told them to commit crimes. Mental health professionals started warning parents about certain stories. Then there was the problem of exploitation. Some content creators made money off tragedy. They would cover real murders and missing persons cases, framing them as if they were creepypastas. Or they would take real traumatic events and fictionalize them without permission. Families of victims complained. They did not want their tragedies turned into entertainment. But the line between true crime and fiction became increasingly blurred. Copyright disputes continued causing problems. Who owned these stories? Many had been posted anonymously. Others were collaborative. When money got involved, people fought. Some narrators were sued by writers. Some writers tried to claim ownership of characters they did not create. The murky origins of many creepypastas made these disputes nearly impossible to resolve fairly. There were also issues with stolen content. People would take popular creepypastas, change a few details, and pass them off as original work. Or they would take stories from small sites and repost them on larger platforms without credit. The anonymous nature of much creepypasta made it hard to prove theft. And even when theft was proven, there was little recourse. No lawyers, no courts, just community shame, which only worked if the thief cared about reputation. Some creators dealt with harassment. Popular narrators received death threats from fans who felt betrayed when they learned the stories were fiction. Writers were doxxed by people angry about story content. The anonymity of the internet, which allowed creepypasta to flourish, also enabled harassment and abuse. The community has never fully resolved these issues. They are ongoing, but most people in the community try to be responsible. They add disclaimers. They avoid exploiting real tragedies. They give credit where credit is due. They look out for vulnerable members. It is not perfect, but it is better than it could be. The dark side of creepypasta is a reminder that stories have power. They can inspire, entertain, bring people together, but they can also harm, especially when the audience includes vulnerable individuals who struggle to separate fiction from reality. The community continues wrestling with how to tell scary stories responsibly, and that wrestling is ongoing. The world changed in 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic forced everyone inside, and suddenly, people were online more than ever before, bored, anxious, looking for distraction. Horror content exploded. People binged creepypasta videos, read no-sleep stories, explored ARGs. The pandemic created the perfect conditions for internet horror to thrive. During lockdown, horror felt different. Stories about being trapped inside took on new meaning. Stories about isolation, about not being able to leave your home, about something dangerous outside. These themes resonated in ways they never had before. What had been fiction started feeling uncomfortably real. New creators emerged during this period. With everyone stuck at home, more people tried their hand at making horror content. YouTube channels exploded. TikTok horror accounts proliferated. Subreddits saw record traffic. The sheer volume of content was overwhelming. Most of it was mediocre, but gems appeared. New voices, new perspectives, new ways of being scared. Analog horror became hugely popular. This subgenre mimicked old VHS tapes, emergency broadcasts, and analog television. The aesthetic was retro, fuzzy video, distorted audio. The content was modern horror dressed in vintage clothing. Series like Local 58 and the Mandela Catalogue gained massive followings. They tapped into nostalgia for old media while delivering contemporary scares. The Mandela Catalogue, created by Alex Kister, became one of the biggest horror sensations of the early 2020s. The series presented itself as instructional videos from an alternate reality where humanity is being replaced by creatures called alternates. These beings look almost human, but are wrong in subtle ways. They can mimic voices, appear in your home, replace people you know. The only way to know if someone is an alternate is to look for small tells, unnatural movements, wrong facial expressions. But by the time you notice, it is too late. What made the Mandela Catalogue effective was its presentation. It looked like genuine training videos from the 1980s, warning people about a real threat. The videos included emergency broadcasts, police recordings, found footage, everything designed to feel authentic. The series also introduced terrifying imagery, faces that were almost right but horrifyingly wrong. Images that stayed with you long after watching. Another major development was the rise of AI-generated horror content. As artificial intelligence improved, creators started using it to generate images, stories, even videos. Some AI-generated images were deeply unsettling. Faces that looked real but were subtly wrong. Places that could not exist. Creatures that defied description. This new tool opened possibilities for horror that had never existed before. But AI also raised concerns. If anyone could generate scary images or stories with the push of a button, would quality decline? Would the market be flooded with AI slop? Would human creativity be devalued? The debate continues. Some creators embrace AI as a tool, others reject it as cheating. The community remains divided. Interactive horror also evolved. Choose-your-own adventure-style stories became popular. Readers could make choices that affected the outcome. Some writers created branching narratives with dozens of possible endings. Others used interactive elements like buttons, timers, and hidden pages to enhance the experience. Technology made horror more participatory than ever. Virtual reality started playing a role too. VR horror games based on creepypasta concepts appeared. Imagine experiencing a Slender Man game in VR, being in the dark forest yourself, looking around and seeing him standing there. The immersion was terrifying in ways flat screens could never match. As VR technology improved, more horror creators experimented with the medium. The community itself matured. Many people who discovered creepypasta as teenagers in the early 2000s were now adults in their 30s. They had grown up with these stories. Some left the community, others stayed, becoming elders who remembered the old days. They mentored new creators, maintained archives, kept the history alive. Creepypasta conventions became a thing. Events where fans could meet, cosplay as their favorite characters, attend panels, buy merchandise. These gatherings showed that creepypasta had become a legitimate subculture. People identified as part of the community. They made friends, formed relationships, created together. By 2026, creepypasta had been around for nearly 2 decades. It had survived format changes, platform migrations, controversies, mainstream attention, and it was still going strong, still evolving, still scaring new generations of readers and viewers. For most of this history, we have focused on English-language creepypasta, American and British creators, English forums and websites. But creepypasta is not just an American phenomenon. It has spread globally, and each country has developed its own creepypasta culture. Japan has a rich tradition of horror stories called kaiden, ghost stories passed down through generations. When the internet arrived, Japan created its own version of creepypasta. They called it kawaii hanashi, scary stories. Japanese horror had always been different from Western horror. Less about monsters and violence, more about atmosphere and psychological dread. About things that are wrong rather than obviously scary. Japanese internet horror often featured cursed websites, haunted videos, strange phenomena that spread through digital media. One famous Japanese creepypasta was about a video called Kuchisake Onna, the slit-mouthed woman. According to the story, a video showed a woman with her mouth cut from ear to ear, asking if you think she is pretty. If you answer no, she kills you. If you answer yes, she cuts your mouth like hers. The legend was old, but the internet gave it new life. Korea developed its own creepypasta culture too. Korean horror often focused on technology, cursed apps, haunted social media accounts, videos that caused death. One popular Korean creepypasta was about an app that showed you how you would die. Everyone who used the app died exactly as predicted. The story tapped into Korean society's complex relationship with technology and fate. Russia had a vibrant creepypasta scene. Russian creepypastas often involved abandoned Soviet facilities, secret experiments, things left over from the Cold War. The Russian sleep experiment, which we discussed in part 1, was one of the earliest international creepypastas to gain worldwide fame. It resonated because it played on fears of Soviet authoritarianism and inhumane experimentation. Latin America embraced creepypasta enthusiastically. Spanish-language creepypasta sites emerged. YouTube channels in Spanish gained millions of subscribers. Latin American creators brought their own folklore into the mix. La Llorona, the weeping woman, appeared in modern creepypastas. El Cucay, the boogeyman, was reimagined for the internet age. Traditional legends were adapted for digital storytelling. In Mexico, creepypasta blended with narco-culture. Stories about cartels, disappeared people, violence in border towns. These stories were often based on real events, making them especially disturbing. The line between creepypasta and true crime became blurred. Some stories were entirely fictional. Others were embellished versions of real tragedies. It was hard to tell which was which. European countries each developed their own flavors of creepypasta. German creepypastas often involved World War II, haunted concentration camps, Nazi experiments, things buried in the past coming back. These stories were controversial. Some felt they trivialized real horrors. Others argued they were ways of processing historical trauma. The debate continues. Eastern European creepypastas featured abandoned buildings, post-Soviet decay, things left behind after communism fell. The imagery was powerful. Crumbling apartments, empty factories, forgotten monuments. These places became settings for modern ghost stories. Urban explorers would film themselves investigating these locations, sometimes staging creepypasta scenarios. Middle Eastern creepypastas incorporated jinn, demons from Islamic folklore, cursed objects, ancient evils awakened by modern technology. These stories blended traditional beliefs with contemporary horror. They resonated in communities where belief in the supernatural remained strong. African creepypastas were underrepresented but growing. Nigerian creators posted horror stories on forums. South African YouTubers made scary content. These stories often featured African folklore, witchcraft, spirits, things that existed in traditional beliefs but were adapted for digital media. What was fascinating was how creepypasta traveled across language barriers. Popular English creepypastas were translated into dozens of languages. Slender Man appeared in Japanese. Jep the Killer was famous in Russia. Ben Drowned was translated into Spanish. These characters became global, but they also changed in translation. Local creators adapted them, added elements from their own cultures, created regional variations. The international spread of creepypasta showed that horror is universal. Every culture has scary stories. Every language has ways to express fear. The internet just gave us new ways to share those fears across borders, to scare each other in languages we do not speak, to create a global community bound by the love of being frightened. So here we are, 2026, nearly 2 decades since the term creepypasta was coined, nearly 30 years since the first horror stories appeared on internet forums. The genre has survived everything thrown at it: format changes, platform migrations, mainstream attention, controversy, and it keeps evolving. But what comes next? Where does creepypasta go from here? The honest answer is nobody knows, but we can make some educated guesses based on current trends. First, technology will continue changing how we tell scary stories. Virtual reality will get better, more accessible. Imagine fully immersive creepypasta experiences. You put on a headset and you are in the story, walking through the haunted house yourself, being chased by the monster. The level of fear will be unprecedented, but also potentially dangerous. How scary is too scary when it feels completely real? Artificial intelligence will play a bigger role. AI could generate personalized horror stories based on your fears. Imagine an AI that knows what scares you specifically. It analyzes your social media, your search history, your location, and it creates a story designed to terrify you personally. That is both exciting and deeply concerning. Who controls that AI? What happens if it goes too far? Social media platforms will keep evolving. New platforms will emerge. Each will create new opportunities for horror storytelling. Maybe there will be a platform designed specifically for horror, a social network where everything is scary stories and creepy images. Or maybe horror will just adapt to whatever platform becomes popular next. Creepypasta has always been adaptable. The line between fiction and reality will get even blurrier. Deepfakes already make it possible to create fake videos of real people. What happens when someone creates a deepfake video as part of a creepypasta? What happens when you cannot tell if that video of your friend is real or part of a horror story? The ethical implications are enormous. Collaborative storytelling will become more sophisticated. Imagine thousands of people contributing to a single horror narrative, each adding pieces, building the mythology together. Technology could make this easier. Wikis, shared documents, real-time collaboration. The story would be truly collective, owned by everyone and no one. Horror games will keep pushing boundaries. As game technology improves, games will become scarier, more realistic, more personalized. Games that adapt to your reactions, that learn what scares you, that change based on your choices. The line between game and reality will blur. Mainstream media will keep trying to adapt creepypasta. Some attempts will succeed, most will fail. Hollywood still does not fully understand internet horror. They keep trying to turn it into traditional movies. But the essence of creepypasta is that it is not traditional. It is weird, collaborative, community-driven. Those things do not translate easily to mainstream formats. The community will face new challenges, questions about AI-generated content, debates about what counts as real creepypasta, arguments about commercialization, concerns about mental health and responsibility. These issues will not go away. The community will have to keep grappling with them. But through it all, people will keep telling scary stories. Because that is what humans do. We have been doing it for thousands of years. We will keep doing it for thousands more. The medium changes, the technology evolves, but the basic human desire to scare each other, that never goes away. Creepypasta is not going anywhere. It will keep evolving, keep adapting, keep finding new ways to frighten us. And we will keep coming back for more. Because as much as we say we hate being scared, deep down we love it. Let us step back and look at the bigger picture. What has creepypasta accomplished? What has it taught us? Why does it matter? First, creepypasta proved that the internet could create legitimate art in the early days. Internet culture was dismissed. Memes were stupid. Online communities were wastes of time. But creepypasta showed that the internet could be a serious creative space, that anonymous users working together could create stories as compelling as anything published traditionally, that digital folklore was real folklore. Second, creepypasta democratized storytelling. You did not need a publisher. You did not need an agent. You did not need money or connections. You just needed an idea and an internet connection. Thousands of people who would never have been published traditionally found audiences. Some built careers. Many just enjoyed sharing their creativity with others. The barrier to entry was essentially zero. Third, creepypasta showed the power of community. These stories were not just consumed individually, they were discussed, analyzed, expanded, adapted, illustrated, narrated. The community made the stories better. Readers became co-creators. The collaborative nature of creepypasta was revolutionary in ways that are still being understood. Fourth, creepypasta demonstrated that horror could be sophisticated. Early critics dismissed it as juvenile, badly written, cheap shock value, and yes, much of it was. But the best creepypasta was genuinely literary, well-crafted, psychologically complex. Stories like Pen Pal and The Left-Right Game could hold their own against any traditionally published horror. Creepypasta elevated internet fiction. Fifth, creepypasta changed how we think about ownership and authorship. Many of the most famous creepypastas have unknown authors. They belong to everyone. They are part of collective culture. This challenged traditional ideas about intellectual property, about who owns stories, about how art spreads and evolves. There are no clear answers, but creepypasta forced us to ask the questions. Sixth, creepypasta showed that new media creates new kinds of stories. You could not tell a Ben Drowned story before video games existed. You could not create an ARG before the internet allowed multimedia storytelling. Each new technology enables new forms of narrative. Creepypasta exploited this better than almost any other genre. It was always at the cutting edge of what was possible. Seventh, creepypasta revealed something about human psychology. Why do we love being scared? Why do scary stories spread? Why do we keep coming back to things that make us uncomfortable? Creepypasta became a case study in fear. Psychologists and sociologists studied it, tried to understand its appeal. And while they do not have complete answers, they learned a lot about how horror functions in the digital age. Eighth, creepypasta created a generation of horror fans and creators. Many people discovered their love of horror through creepypasta. Many professional horror writers started by posting stories on No Sleep. Many game developers, filmmakers, and artists were inspired by creepypasta. The genre influenced an entire generation of creators. That influence will continue for decades. Finally, creepypasta reminded us that storytelling is fundamental to human nature. We have been telling scary stories around campfires for thousands of years. The internet is just a new kind of campfire. The stories are different. The medium is different. But the basic impulse is the same. We gather together in the dark and we scare each other, because that is what humans do. Creepypasta is not high art. It is not trying to be, but it is important. It matters. It changed how we tell stories, how we create communities, how we think about fear, and it is still changing, still evolving, still finding new ways to creep us out. So here we are at the end. We have covered nearly 30 years of internet horror. From the first stories posted on Usenet groups to the latest TikTok scares, From Slender Man to Siren Head, from 4chan to No Sleep to YouTube to everywhere, we have met the characters, explored the communities, examined the controversies, and traced how creepypasta evolved from a small internet subculture to a global phenomenon. But here is the thing. This is not really the end. The history of creepypasta is still being written. Right now, someone is posting a new story. Someone is creating a new character. Someone is starting a new ARG. Someone is narrating a video that will get millions of views. Someone is being scared for the first time by a story that will stay with them forever. The internet never stops. Stories never stop spreading. New platforms emerge. New technologies enable new kinds of horror. New creators bring fresh perspectives. The only constant is change, and creepypasta has proven it can change, it can adapt, it can survive anything. Maybe you read this because you are a long-time fan, someone who has been reading creepypasta since the early days, who remembers when Slender Man was first created, who stayed up late reading No Sleep on your phone, who watched Marble Hornets as it aired. If that is you, thank you for being part of this community, for supporting these creators, for keeping the stories alive. Maybe you read this because you are new to creepypasta. You heard about it, got curious, wanted to understand what all the fuss was about. If that is you, welcome. You have a lot of great stories ahead of you, and fair warning, you are going to lose a lot of sleep. Once you start reading creepypasta, it is hard to stop. Or maybe you read this as research. You are studying internet culture, digital folklore, modern horror, how stories spread in the age of social media. If that is you, I hope this was helpful. I hope it gave you insight into this strange, fascinating corner of the internet. Whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever brought you here, thank you for taking this journey with me. We went into the darkness together. We explored the shadows. We met the monsters, and we came out the other side. But before you go, remember this. The best creepypastas are the ones that make you question what is real, that blur the line between fiction and truth, that stick with you long after you finish reading, that make you check the shadows, lock your doors, look over your shoulder. So as you close this document and go about your day, ask yourself, are you sure everything you just read was history? Are you certain these stories are all fiction? Are you positive that right now, at this very moment, something is not watching you from just outside your vision? Of course, you are not sure, and that uncertainty, that little seed of doubt, that is creepypasta working exactly as intended. Sleep well tonight, if you can, and remember, the story never ends. It just waits in the dark, watching, always watching.